Hey, it's Austin, and today I'm going to be sharing 3 specific steps that you can use so that you can serve like a pro. At the end of this video, I'm going to be giving a bonus tip as well, so make sure that you stick around so you don't miss it. Also, this video is sponsored by Selkirk. I use the new Luxe Control Air, which are these paddles right behind me. If you are in need of a new paddle or any pickleball gear, go to selkirk.com and type in code ADV-Playbook at checkout, and you'll receive a free e-gift card after your purchase. Okay, so the first tip actually has to do with our pre-service routine. Okay, so it doesn't even have to do with the serve, but it prepares us to be able to hit a successful serve with enough depth, spin, and pace, and also helps us to be able to hit the sweet spot. So I'm sure you've seen many times in pro, in amateur, and even in yourself that you have kind of your own pre-service routine that you use. And that might be bouncing the ball on the ground with your hand. It might be bouncing the ball on the ground with your paddle. Some people even bounce the ball up on their paddle. Some people do this and they don't even realize that they're helping themselves to be able to hit a more consistent serve by doing it, but it's just a byproduct automatically, but they just do it just because they've seen everybody else do it. And then other people will just get up, they don't have any pre-service routine, and they just serve the ball. And I would suggest that these people don't have as much consistency as the latter, okay? As the former, not the latter. So what this pre-service routine is doing is allowing you to be able to hit the sweet spot more clearly. And let me explain what I mean by that. So for instance, I like to bounce the ball on the ground from my paddle. And as I'm doing that, I alternate between my hand and the ball, okay, as it's bouncing onto the ground. And I'm aiming for a specific spot on the ground. Now that could be just a little crack that's in the ground, could be a pebble on the ground, could be a different coloration or a skid mark or something. I am aiming to hit that every single time, and I'm aiming very small and precise. Okay, so what this is doing is sending signals to my brain of accuracy so that when I then go into my actual serve, I'm going to hit the sweet spot. And not only the sweet spot, but I'm going to hit the center of the sweet spot a lot more because I've been aiming so small with my pre-service routine. So it's kind of an interesting thing, and it's something that a lot of people don't know, a lot of people don't think about, but they end up doing it anyway. And the biggest thing that sets apart a pro from an amateur is this pre-service routine, okay? Or even a pre-return routine, where people will have their little things that they do, where maybe they'll smack their leg to reset them so that they forget everything that's happened, regardless of if it was good or bad. They forget it, they smack their leg, they're into the next point, they're only focused on that point. Or they'll go back and tap the fence, something like that. So this is something that you can do before your serve, whether that's bouncing it up on your paddle, bouncing it down on your paddle, or bouncing it with your hand, to be able to hit a more accurate serve, reset yourself, be ready for the next point. Okay, so step number 2 has to do with the actual serve now. So we're getting into it, right? So with the serve, there's something called coiling and uncoiling that we do. And that's where we turn our non-dominant shoulder and hip towards our opponent or towards where we want to serve, okay? So I am coiling up myself. And what this is called is power loading. And power loading is where we are creating as much coil as possible so that we can take a real crack at the ball as we uncoil. And a lot of the time, especially with beginner players and just lower level players, nothing against them at all because they just haven't learned, is you'll see kind of a patty cake serve, right? I don't know who out there has played basketball, but the granny shot, right? That's what they essentially do with their serve, where they're just scooping the ball from under and then they extend towards their target. There's no coiling going on for them to create power. So those players won't have any power. They'll have some, obviously, but not nearly as much as they could have if they were coiling and uncoiling as they were hitting. So just remember, your non-dominant shoulder needs to face your opponents. And then as you that's coiling up, right? You're power loading, you're loading everything into your legs. And then as you hit, you're going to create all that power as you come through it. So stop patty caking the ball if you're doing that. Get out there and practice coiling, turning that non-dominant shoulder towards your opponents. Okay, that brings us to step number 3, which is uncoiling. So we have talked about in step number 2 how we coil, right? And I don't know why the word's coil, but that is the word. It's like foil. I don't know. It could be because maybe foil, you crunch it up. And then, yeah, that's probably not why. But it's called coiling anyway. And so we're coiling in and then the uncoil. And I feel like there's a lot to think about with the uncoil if we're not careful. So I want to be able to help you guys so that your brain isn't bombarded with, okay, I need to uncoil my hip and my shoulder and my legs, right? Because we can't be thinking that during the serve. We're just going to be inaccurate. Because there's so much to focus on, I want to give you guys the one thing that you need to focus on in order for all of that to take care of itself so that you automatically uncoil without having to think about everything specifically. And what that is your non-dominant arm, okay? That's all you have to think about. Your non-dominant elbow specifically is going to come in to your side. Okay, so right against your rib cage, just past your rib cage, as you can see in the video. I'm bringing that non-dominant elbow into my side as I begin my motion forward. That's automatically going to uncoil everything that needs to be uncoiled without me having to specifically think about it. And with that, the reason that we were doing that is because we're power loaded, okay? And then we're taking that power and we're transferring it all forward. So focus on this in your practice and you'll have a lot more power on all your serves. Okay, so that brings us to our bonus tip. And there's actually 2 bonus tips, okay? So the first is extending towards the ball and hitting outward and upward through our motion. I always like to think outward and upward as I'm hitting. So I'm not going outward and downward or outward and to the side. I'm going outward and upward through my motion. And that's going to create topspin as I windshield wiper over the ball. So for those of you that drive cars and those of you that don't, everybody knows what a windshield wiper is, right? Because they're on buses. I think they're on trains. They're not on planes, but they're on tons of other stuff, okay, right?
Windshield wipers, maybe?
We have our windshield wiper that's just going across the glass, removing all of the raindrops out of our way. So our wrist needs to be the windshield wiper in our service motion. And what that's going to do is create the topspin to bring all of that power, harness all that power and bring it back down into the court. So the windshield wiper motion is simple as this. If you guys look at it from this angle, I'm just pretty much waving hello to my opponents as I'm swinging that ball, okay? So I'm hitting and I wave from east to west or from west to east as I hit through the shot. And I'm hitting the back and top of the ball, okay? So I'm coming up the backside and over the top of the ball as I hit that windshield wiper motion. Meanwhile, my arm is going outward and upward as I'm doing this windshield wiper motion. And I begin my windshield wiper motion as soon as I make contact with the ball. And then I'm grazing over the ball throughout that windshield wiper motion. Okay, so this brings us to our final bonus point. I know I said there was only going to be one, but I can't not share this with you guys because this is probably something that's helped my serve the most out of everything else, okay? Obviously, you have to have the right form, which we went over. But all that aside, it's a strategy that you guys can use to be able to hit with the most depth possible to put the most pressure on your opponents. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking right now, like, if you want to create depth on your serve, where you should be aiming is deep. You should be aiming a foot from the baseline, right? You should be aiming in that box. But I want to give you guys a different strategy to focus on so that you're hitting less serves in the net, for instance. Because the problem with aiming for the service box, a spot in the actual box, is that there's a net in the way. Okay, and we can't hit through the net to be able to get there. So instead of aiming for a spot in the box, you want to, and really pay attention to this because this is one of the greatest tips that I can give you guys on the serve, is focus on aiming for a spot above the net. So when you guys go out and serve and practice serves next, I want you guys to focus on, start by hitting 2 inches above the net. Okay, so you're just aiming for that. It's imaginary, right? It's just space in the air. You're aiming 2 inches above the net instead of for the actual box. 2 inches above the net, serve. Next time, you'll see that lands maybe in between midcourt and the non-volley zone. Next time, aim a foot above the net. You'll see that lands around midcourt. And then try 3 feet, okay, 3 feet above the net. you'll see that that lands near the baseline. Okay, it's going to be different for everybody because we're all different heights. So figure out what that number is that you need to aim. So whether it's 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, or even 5 feet, you're hitting that consistently now that you see that it's going a foot from the baseline. So once you get to that foot area, maybe even 2 feet from the baseline, stick with that number. So 3 feet above the net is where I'm getting a foot above the base, a foot from the baseline. So now I'm aiming 3 feet above the net consistently every single time to be able to create that depth. And that helps you to be able to avoid the net. And many of you probably don't know this, but majority of serves are missed in the net. Okay, they're not missed wide, they're not missed long. The vast majority are actually missed in the net. So if you guys can focus on this, you cannot be a part of this statistic, which you don't want to be a part of that statistic, right? And something that I learned from Julian Arnold, who's a top 10 pro, for those of you that don't know him, he has a fantastic serve. But what he'll do when he's practicing serves is he does this aim high method, okay? But he actually tries to hit the first few of his serves long until he hones his serve back into the court. So he's not aiming short. Obviously, that would be super counterproductive. But he's trying to actually hit them 5 feet long, 4 feet long, 3 feet long, until he gets it to where it's within a couple inches of the baseline consistently. And then he's hitting that spot above the net every single time. All right, that wraps up everything for the serve. Also, for those of you that are wanting to improve your game every single day, I just barely came out with a new training app called Pickleball Playbook. Have over 500 people using the app already, are really, really enjoying it. You guys get exclusive video instruction so that you're always using the right technique, as well as tons of different drills so that you guys are out there getting your reps in. So if that's something that interests you, I'll make sure to leave a link in the description. It'll be at the very top of the description. You guys can click on, download the app, and start training today.